Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for what you do every day. You know, we are a local government state, and we're proud of that. We like that. I don't think any state elects more different office holders from the township level, village, all the way through to the county than Ohio does. And what you do is allow our local governmental units to work together, to look at things from a regional point of view, and to get things done. So thank you very, very much for that. I know in a moment that Grace and I will sit down and have a discussion. They told me to just talk for just a few minutes, and then we'll go to a discussion. We try to do a number of different things, and I think we have done a number of different things since I've become governor. But as I try to break it down, it really is three different things. Number one, the most important, is investing in people. Two is investing in our infrastructure. And three is to create a climate in the state that is a growth climate. That's a climate where business can come in, feel comfortable, create jobs, and the state can move forward. I know we'll get probably some questions about this, but infrastructure. When I became governor, the first thing we had to tackle, frankly, was a problem that local government was having as well as the state. And that is there was not simply enough money in regard to our highways. And I don't have to tell you all this, but I think sometimes people forget that a significant portion of that money from our highway tax goes to local governments. And we looked at it, and frankly, the situation was worse than we thought. And then we had to take those facts to the state legislature. I felt like I was going back to my days as a county prosecutor and trying to make a case. But I think clearly we did make a case, and we were able to raise the gasoline tax, not something anybody ever wants to do, but we knew it was essential for the future of Ohio, essential for the future of our local communities. We've invested significantly in water and sewer, and the legislature's made a decision to do that, and we've made the decision with them. And I suspect you're going to see more just by the demand that we've seen from local governmental units. You're going to see, I suspect, we'll be able to agree, and the legislature will see more money that will be coming back to you all in that area. Demolition deals with a cancer that's in many of our communities, and being able to go and take those buildings down that need to be done. We've financed a lot of that. Brownfields, again, put money back to the local community so the local community can make the decision and strategically decide which of the brownfields are the ones that really need to be cleaned up. Broadband. We put significant money in regard to broadband, and we're moving forward. And just with the money that we've already put out, we're going to see about 250,000 Ohioans who, for the first time, will have broadband. And we have more to do, obviously, in all of those areas. The climate of the state. It's important that government set the climate of the state that's conducive for business to grow and to create jobs. And we have done that. We have the lowest taxes I think we've had in 30 or 40 years. If you look at our bond rating is the highest it's been since 1979. And when we passed the capital budget bill, which, as you know, is usually financed by borrowing money and paying it out over a long period of time, we were able to announce that this capital bill that was passed a few months ago, all of the projects in there, we believe, we'll be able to pay for with cash, and we will not have to borrow that money. So again, creating the climate in the state that's a pro-growth climate. Finally is the most important, though, and that is investment in people. I said in my State of the State speech, my first one in my inaugural speech, that we have to look to the future. And I asked the legislature, come with me as we not only invest in things that we're going to see the results immediately, but also where we're going to see the results in the long run. And it's going to take a number of years to do it. We have dramatically increased our resources going into prenatal care, postnatal care, early childhood development. My wife Fran is working to take, and we have taken, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to every single part of this state. Now we have close to 50%, 48% of the kids 0 to 5 are now signed up for that program. And that's just one of the many things that we're doing. But it's not just young people. It's someone in mid-career that may need additional training. We have 2 programs. What we call IMAP program, which is someone who needs these skills can go and get these skills, and the state will pay for them as long as it's industry-recognized credential. The other is Tech Cred. We've had over 40,000 Ohioans who've taken advantage of Tech Cred, and it's pretty simple. We tell companies, go ahead and upscale someone's credentials as long as they are industry-recognized credentials, and we will pay for it. And so that has made a huge, huge difference. Again, over 40,000 Ohioans have taken advantage of that. Our career centers are doing a phenomenal job around the state of Ohio. My wife Fran and I were in the Collins School down in Lawrence County just a few days ago, and to talk to these young people and see what they're doing, how excited they are, whether it's in nursing or auto mechanics or whatever it is, and they're excited that they're going to have a job, and some of them already do have a job, and they're going to make good money, and so expanding that type program, we are paying to give the incentive, and frankly, these schools are doing a bang-up job, and the superintendents and those who are in the schools are just phenomenal job. But to give the incentive, we set aside $1,250 for every student who is in a program in those schools that is industry recognized credential and where there is a need for those positions. Again, that's an incentive for the school to move forward and to do that. The summary is that people ask me, Mike, what keeps you awake at night? Or they'll ask me, what do you want to do in a second term? Why are you running? And it's all kind of the same question. And those are very, very legitimate questions. My goal every single day, and our team's goal every single day, is to work to make sure every Ohioan has the ability to live up to their God-given potential. We too often in the past have seen young people who graduate from high school and they're not on a path. They're not on a pathway to college. They're not on a pathway to a career. And it's not that kids can't change their pathway. I've changed mine. My wife, Fran, will tell you, a few dozen times. When we got married, she thought I was going to be, and I thought I was going to be teaching high school social studies. So there's nothing wrong with changing, but it's getting these kids excited and exposing them to all the different opportunities that there are in our society today. And to me, that is the most important thing, because I want for these children what I want for my own kids, and now what I want for my grandkids. And that is for them to be happy. And I've learned in life that the way most people are happy is if they find something in life that they have a passion to do. And then they get the skills to do that. And every day they get up and have that passion to go do that. That's what I want for every child in the state of Ohio. We're making significant progress. We have more work to do. So I just look forward to the discussion, and I'm going to join Grace now, and we're going to have a discussion. Thank you again for inviting me. Appreciate it very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor DeWine, for sharing your platform with us. Join me now for the Fireside Chat portion of today's program. My name is Grace Gallucci. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of NOACA, the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, We serve the greater Cleveland area, which represents 5 counties: Cuyahoga, Geauga, Lake, Lorain, and Medina. I would like to acknowledge our president of the board, Commissioner John Hamercheck from Lake County. It is the leadership of local elected officials like Commissioner Hamercheck that make us what we are and really leads us in doing the work that we do. So, Governor DeWine, we're going to start first with a question on the importance of regions and regional councils across the state. So the role of regional councils throughout Ohio is to assist local communities with a diverse range of services from transportation, community development, economic development, and to serve as a forum for collaboration. As governor, how do regions and regional councils fit into your strategy for infrastructure, jobs, and more?
Well, there's certainly, Grace, thank you for the question. There's certainly an integral part of everything that we do. And I'll go back to something I said earlier. I started my career as a county prosecuting attorney. And I think that's significant because I was at the local level. I saw what was going on. I worked with the county commissioners. I worked with the auditor, worked with the township trustees. And I do believe Ohio is unique, and I think we do it the right way. The services that we have are provided locally. And so we anticipate, if you look at the different money that we have put out and what we have done, we have focused on local government and the realization that it comes locally. And it certainly comes from the regional councils. Here's an example. We have set aside and are now we'll be putting out $500 million for Appalachia, 32 counties in Appalachia. Fran and I were traveling there a couple days ago. And we fully anticipate that local communities will come together. And some of them may do this regionally. And in fact, we are prioritizing that. Local communities are under this money. Local communities set the criteria. They decide how they want to spend the money. Now, this particular bunch of money is part of the money that comes from the federal government. So we have to follow those guidelines. It has to have some nexus to the pandemic. But it's fully anticipated as we talk to people in the local community. The exciting thing is you're seeing people get together. And again, councils are clearly a great way for that to be done. And we do it in many other ways as well. We put a premium on communities coming together and coming up with a good plan together.
Thank you, Governor. As an organization that has local elected officials, commissioners, mayors, county engineers as part of our board, we appreciate the partnership with the state. We do work as a collaborator to bring federal, state, and locals together. And again, we thank you for that. That's going to move us into the first part of the conversation on infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. The American Society of Civil Engineers recently upgraded Ohio's infrastructure grade from a D+ to a C-. That is an improvement, but we still have some work ahead of us. And to that end, Ohio passed a critical motor fuel tax increase in the last General Assembly that has brought us significant needed funding to the state budget. I know much of that was through your leadership, and the state gas tax increase combined with the brand new, at the federal level, bipartisan infrastructure law now presents to us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to further upgrade and repair Ohio's infrastructure, as well as to expand it for economic development. What's your plan to leverage these resources in order to help communities prosper?
Well, we could certainly always do better. It's interesting on these rankings. CNBC not too long ago ranked us second in infrastructure in the whole country. So we can go back and forth with different grades, but I think the most important thing is what we as Ohioans do as we look at infrastructure. We are situated ideally in this country. Within a day's drive, we have 60% of the population of this country, 60% of the population of Canada. And so, I'm telling you, interstate highways crisscross the state. And so making our highways to be upgraded and to be the best that they can be is an essential part, frankly, of locating businesses here. They look at that. They want to see how good the highways are. And, we were faced with a real crisis. It was worse than we even imagined once we kind of looked under the covers and saw what was going on. We were going straight down as far as money coming in, which meant that all the local communities were going straight down as well. So that's why we made that decision to get that additional money. These partnerships, and you're right, if you look at the federal dollars that are coming in, if you look at what we're doing with infrastructure, we started basically from day one to invest in infrastructure. So because of what we were able to do and the legislature did in regard to our highways, and now the federal dollars coming in, we're working very closely with Governor Beshear. We're going to build, for those of you in the Cincinnati area, we're going to build that bridge across the Ohio River. It's finally going to get done, and that's all of those factors come together. And if any of them had not taken place, we would not be able to do that. But it's also true with broadband. What we're seeing is we made the decision early on we're going to fund broadband, and we came up with a system, and I think it's a system that makes a lot of sense, and we intend to put additional dollars into that. But just what we put in so far, we estimate that's going to mean a quarter of a million Ohioans for the first time are going to have broadband. And we should not stop until we have the entire state covered and everybody covered. It's kind of like if you go back 100 years ago and you kind of read about how electricity got to the farms. That's really kind of where we are. It's the last mile. It's the last 2 miles. That is what is difficult. But it's also in our cities. I was several years ago in East Cleveland talking to the mayor, and the mayor told me about where the broadband basically stopped, and it stopped at the line between Cleveland and East Cleveland. And we've gone in there and we've worked with the mayor and looked with the local community, and we've started to make a difference in that area. But all of it is, I think we have to look at it. It's a very good question, because I think we have to look at this holistically. Yes, we have federal dollars. And in some cases, many of those cases, we decide. We're given the choice of where that money goes. In some cases, you're given the choice. And sometimes the federal government tells exactly where it's going to go. But all of that together, we have to plan, and we have to look and see where the holes are so that we can fill those holes. And the state government, to do that, we have to work with you, and we have to work with all local governments, and that's frankly what we do.
Thank you, Governor. And I did want to mention that the grade of C- was most certainly by a tough professor, and that even a C-, though, to your point earlier, is one of the better in the nation. It is well above average. Clearly, we still...
we can always do better.
Always do better,
and
exactly.
That's the goal. We always want to do better. We want Ohio to be number one, and we're just going to keep fighting no matter what the issue is, and to make sure that we try to achieve that.
Great, thank you. Continuing on that question, in order to access federal dollars, you do need the local match. So the gas tax certainly has helped us to be able to generate that revenue to fully access federal dollars. But when we talk about the gas tax, I know that there have been calls in a recent response to the fluctuation of gas prices and inflation. I know you have put your position out there that we should not suspend the gas tax. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when gas went above $5 a gallon, I mean, it's crazy numbers, and it's crazy when it's over $4. And you know, I certainly have talked to people in Ohio has really been a huge burden. They commute a long distance to work, for example, and that's a tremendous extra cost. So it wasn't easy to take the position that I did, but I thought it was important. And I thought it was important because, and my position is that we should not, as Grace said, that we should not do that. I think that would give us a temporary little relief, but in 6 months or 9 months, I think Ohioans would have looked up and said, well, what in the world was the governor thinking about? What was the legislature thinking about? Now we've got roads that we can't fix. Now we can't, build a new Brent Spence Bridge. Now we can't do this and that. And so I just think it would have been really kind of trying to fool people to do that and say, look, we're gonna cut that. So I think it was an irresponsible thing to do, and I think it would have been, frankly, a mistake to do it.
And as an MPO, we would agree. We're glad to have the additional revenue to support the work that we do. That brings us to a question of new revenue sources. The most recent transportation budget directed the state to explore new ways of generating transportation revenues, in large part because the trends of gas tax perhaps becoming obsolete due to the growing electrification of the nation's vehicle fleet. ODOT has convened a working group to explore that option or those options. I'm very proud to represent OARC on that group, and they are doing a terrific job of taking a blank canvas and really exploring. We're up to, I think, 30 different alternatives that we are seriously considering. We'll bring you a much shorter list, but we are starting out with that blank canvas. So to that end, though, how will you continue to encourage the development of new and creative mechanisms to generate transportation revenue for Ohio?
Well, first of all, thank you for serving. It is something that we know that we are facing. And I think that it's important for us to be ready, frankly, when the people of the state are ready to make that switch. We know we're moving towards more electric vehicles. I don't think anybody knows exactly how fast we're going to move, but we're certainly moving in that direction. And obviously, once you hit some critical mass there, you can't fund your roads if people aren't buying gasoline, or if there's a significant number of people who are not doing it. So we're going to have to come up with something else. Thank you for serving on that. I'm anxious to see what you all come up with. I could speculate on how to do it, but as you know, as elected officials, the rule in politics is you have to have something that works, and you have to have something that people think is fair, and you have to have something that's acceptable to people. And so we're into kind of an education, we're into a transition, and I think that your working group coming up with recommendations to the legislature and to the governor and ultimately to the people of the state is certainly is the right thing to do. And when that day comes that we're ready to move, then we'll have the recommendations to choose from. I hope not 30, but
we're going to bring you a shorter list.
Hope you'll get a short list.
And we are currently analyzing them against the principles, which are very much aligned with what you just said.
Good.
Last question on transportation is probably the most important, and that's on safety. Distracted driving is a growing trend that's caused an increase in deaths and serious injuries on our roads. OARC members understand the importance of transportation safety and making our transportation network the safest for all users. In fact, OARC has actively supported HB 283, which makes distracted driving a primary offense. How can OARC, the regional councils, along with the local governments, work with you and ODOT to get this measure enacted into law?
Well, first of all, thank you for that support. This is a high priority for me. This is an area where we know if we change this law, if we pass this law, we know that lives will be saved. I mean, we absolutely know that by looking at the data from other states that have done this. So we need to join those states that have done that. I think the most significant thing that you can do, and this is a very influential group, is talk to your legislator, talk to your state senators, talk to your state rep. You know, there's nothing more powerful, and I can tell you this from my experience in the legislature, my experience in Congress, nothing more powerful than an elected official talking to a member of Congress, or talking, in this case, to a member of the legislature, and saying, look, this is our position, and this is why it's important. That's why it's important to our mutual constituents. So you have great power to do that, and you know, I appreciate what you're doing collectively. If, as individuals, you can go out and talk to members of the General Assembly, that would be great. We have you know, when you look at distracted driving, I was with some folks yesterday that build highways. I have been with the unions that are involved, and it's a very scary thing for an ODOT employee or for a contractor's employee to be in one of these construction zones, because distracted drivers, you know, can be up on a construction zone very, very quick if they're not paying attention, and it's a very dangerous situation. It's not just people in construction zone; it's everybody on the highway, and there's just horrible, horrible tragedies that we see. So we can slow that down. The big picture, as you know, is nationwide. And in Ohio, we have seen in the last several years auto fatalities go up. We have people driving faster, and we have more people distracted. So this is one thing that we can, a very tangible thing that we can do.
Great. Let's move on now to a different type of infrastructure, and that's water. You know, we talk about in the United States the East Coast and the West Coast. Ohio is the heart of it all. We're also the North Coast. We are on the shores of Lake Erie. And being from Northeast Ohio, the lake is even more important to us. So I'd like to ask a question about water quality. First, I applaud the H2O program and what it can do to improve water quality for Ohioans. But as you know, Ohio's water resources have continued to experience toxic algae blooms, plaguing Lake Erie, the Maumee River, Grand Lake St. Mary's, and increasingly other bodies of water in our state. Much of the pollution comes from non-point sources, primarily agricultural. The Ohio EPA and other experts agree that voluntary agricultural efforts may not be doing enough to move the needle on this issue, and Ohio EPA has called for phosphorus to be classified as an agricultural pollutant. What are your thoughts on pursuing stronger regulation of agriculture as part of or separate from the ongoing H2O effort?
Well, let me explain first. Thank you for the question. It's very, very important. I mean, water is one of the things that we have in Ohio that we have to obviously take care of. You're seeing in the southwestern states today a huge problem with not enough water. It's one of our greatest assets, frankly. And companies that are thinking about locating in Ohio certainly look at the availability of water. It's also important. I think over 3 million Ohioans get their water from Lake Erie. So what goes on in Lake Erie and algae bloom is very, very important. We never want to, again, see a situation like we saw a few years ago in Toledo where people literally could not drink the water. So very important. Again, this is an area that, frankly, when I became governor, there was not a plan. And so what I did is I put together the best professors, researchers, scientists who understand this and who have studied this, and asked them to help us come up with a plan. We took the information that they had given us and frankly ended up doing some computer runs, trying to figure out some simulations to figure out, you know, what was the most cost-effective thing to do, how could we do it, and make some real progress. Two conflicting values here that don't have to conflict, and that was our attitude. One is Northwest Ohio is some of the finest farmland in the world. and tremendous amount of farming done there and crops coming out of there. Huge. Number two, of course, is the importance of the Great Lakes, the importance of Lake Erie. So, and as your question stated, there's no doubt that the vast majority of the problem comes off the farms. So what do? We ended up with something that we labeled H2 Ohio. We got the legislature to buy into it. It's a very, very significant commitment, close to $100 million a year commitment. And we laid it out based on what the scientists told us and said, look, we got to do this for at least for 10 years. And it's going to take a while, and it's going to take a long-term approach. It's based on two basic things that we're doing. One is we have created or are in the active process of creating over 140 new wetlands. We're very proud of that because they serve as a filter. But not only do they serve as a filter, it also helps in the environment in many, many other ways. It helps with wildfowl, et cetera. The other thing that we did is we said, look, we've got to get farmers to change farming practices and go to best practices. And we want to do it in a way that will make some real progress. And so what we are doing is paying farmers and giving them the methods to use. And we have signed up a massive amount of acres and farmers who are in fact doing this. And the goal is to get them switched over to best farming practices. Once they get switched over, there's some certainly initial cost associated with that. It's our belief that from an economic point of view, after a while, they will be better off and will know they're better off by continuing those practices. But initially, we sign them up and we pay them to do these new farming practices, the best farming practices. We think, the scientists think that this is going to make a difference, but the scientists warned us early on, look, you're not going to see on Lake Erie immediate results. What you'll see when we look at algae bloom initially, and you read in the paper about the algae bloom, or you're out on the lake, or you're in the western basin of the lake, and you see the algae bloom. That, at least for the initial few years, the experts told us, is going to be determined more by the weather. What you see is going to be more by the weather than actually what is happening. But we do know that we're significantly changing the amount of phosphorus that goes into the lake. So the answer to the question is we got to let this run. We've got to do what is hard for me personally to do, and it's hard for all of us to do. We're Americans. We think we can get a result immediately, and we're not going to get a result immediately. But we're doing things that are meaningful, and we're doing them at significant cost. But it's based on the science and the best people that we can find to advise the state in regard to how to do that.
Thank you. Now we're going to shift gears, and that's a transportation pun intended, to broadband. And you spoke about that already a couple of times this morning and the importance of it. Obviously, high-speed internet has been as important, or has become as important as a utility, such as water, sewer, electricity. It's also considered infrastructure that could be as important as a highway. So, as you noted, though, there are many who don't have access to broadband. Almost a third of Ohioans in the rural areas lack access to broadband, and many urban residents either don't have it, as you noted with East Cleveland, or even if they do, they can't afford to pay for it. So Ohio has taken good steps to start to close the digital divide, including the HB2 grant program and securing available federal dollars. Moving forward, what do you believe should our priorities be around broadband and closing that divide?
Well, you've described the problem, and we really saw it when our schools were closed and kids were supposed to be on the internet and some kids couldn't be on the internet. And it wasn't just the kids in Appalachia, it was also some kids in cities. Parents couldn't afford it, didn't have it, or as I said in the case of East Cleveland, they didn't have the broadband in there. So that, we saw that problem. We saw young people literally sitting in a car outside the library or outside of McDonald's or someplace where they had the Wi-Fi. So that certainly is a problem. It can also be an urban, as I said, it can be an urban problem as well as a rural problem. So we came up with a plan in regard to that. And the balance that you have to do is what you don't want to do is compete directly with the private sector if the private sector was going to do it anyway. And so, when we set up the system of grants, we allowed somebody in the private sector to come in and say, well, we're going to build this anyway. And we require them then to actually go ahead and build it. So it was, I think, a well thought out plan. We're going to have to continue to put additional funds into that. We are committed to doing that. You pointed out, Grace, two very good points. You have two problems. One is there's not the connection. I can't get it. The other is I can't afford it. And so again, working with nonprofits, working with for-profits, making sure that what goes in is in fact affordable by those families is an essential part of this. But we have one person who's totally focused on this, and again, you're seeing some additional money that's going into the local communities from the federal government. That plays a role as well. But my commitment to everybody in the state who does not have broadband, we think it's important. We think it's your ticket to maybe a job. We think it's your ticket to education. And it's wrong for you to be denied that. And we're going to do absolutely everything we can to continue to speed this process up. And it's going to take additional resources, and we're willing to not only willing to do that, but we want to do that, and we will do that.
Thank you. Hold on, Governor. We're going to change lanes now. Again, transportation, pun intended, and talk about brownfields. The creation of Jobs Ohio ended a successful program, Clean Ohio, for brownfield redevelopment and created a new brownfield redevelopment program which offers economic incentives tied to job creation for redevelopment of vacant or contaminated industrial land and buildings. In the last budget, significant funds were allocated to brownfield cleanup and redevelopment, filling a very critical need for communities of all sizes and all aspects of geography across the state. The state also just recently concluded a round of brownfield redevelopment and site revitalization grants through funding that was administered by the Department of Development. As governor, how will you direct the state's effort on both the redevelopment and environmental cleanup?
Well, Grace, thank you. Again, we're going to rely on the local communities. And they're going to be the ones that are ultimately going to make the choices. As we put money out, I think we put $350 million out, if I can remember the exact figure, in this last budget. But that obviously, it won't take care of every brownfield place in the state. So local communities are going to have to be making choices. And they should be making these choices strategically and working with, it's all about their call, but working with Jobs Ohio. Because one of the things that I've seen in the last 3.5 years since I've been governor is that when businesses come in, and are looking for a place, they're looking for a place now. And they're not going to wait for the local community to clean up a site. They're just not generally going to do that. And so these are strategic decisions. Number one, you want to clean a place up that needs to be cleaned up for all the environmental reasons. But number two, you want to end up with something that you can market. Most communities are looking at these brownfields as places where they can lure new businesses to come in, be productive, be taxpayers, and be employing people. So it's a strategic decision what place you're going to clean up. It's ultimately a local decision. We will continue to supply the money, but that's the imperative, it seems to me. Intel is an interesting example, although it's it's kind of one of a kind. But just to give you a quick history, May 3rd, we had our first contact with Intel, and they were already down the road, I think, looking at other sites, and they came back and gave us 3 days to come up with a prospective site. So we sent out to all 8 regions of the state. They came back, one came back, and the one that came back, of course, is the one in Licking County in central Ohio. But they wanted a big chunk of land, huge chunk. Most companies that come in don't want anything near that. But again, what we've learned is they want to move forward. They're impatient, and they're not going to wait for 2 years for us to clean it up. So we've got to put the money up front, clean the spot up, and then be able to market that spot.
Almost over the finish line. Follow up. After transportation, regional councils work on economic development. Many of them are economic development districts and work very closely with Jobs Ohio. And Jobs Ohio recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary. And it operates as the regional network that represents, as you stated, 6 or 8 areas. How successful do you think the approach has been, and what changes, if any, would your administration propose to help meet the state's and your administration's economic development goals?
Well, great question. I don't take credit for the creation of Jobs Ohio. It was created when Governor Kasich was governor, and the state legislature approved it. But it gives us, candidly, a competitive advantage over other states. It is. They work very closely with our administration, but they're separate. It gives them more flexibility. They can sometimes move faster, and there's a number of reasons why they were created. They also have a guaranteed revenue source of funds, which is also helpful, and that's the liquor sales. When I became governor, I asked J.P. Nassif, who I've known for many years from the Dayton area, to head up Jobs Ohio. I asked Bob Smith to head up the governing body of Jobs Ohio. And I charged them in this way. I said, you need to be more aggressive. You need to take a few more chances, calculated chances, but you need to be aggressive. And we need to go after these companies, and we need to go after them hard. The other thing I said to them, and I guess it depends on what part of the state you're from, whether you like this or not, but I said, look, it's not all about Columbus and Cincinnati and Cleveland. It's about those 3, but it's about every community in the state. And so, I want you to do everything that you can to attract businesses to all different parts of the state. And so I've been pleased with what they have done. In regard, Intel is kind of the big, bright, shining object that people see, and will certainly be seeing in the next few years as construction goes, and then as they start. But there's just many other examples of companies coming in and things that we are doing in Ohio, frankly, that we were not doing before. We're making steel in the most modern way possible. In Toledo, we're doing just amazing, all kinds of other businesses that have come in the last few years. I told our team when we were trying to get Jobs Ohio, and we were competing against, when we were trying to get Intel, we were competing against 39 other locations around the country. And I said, look, this makes economic sense if we can get them. It's going to be huge. We're going to have 7,000 construction jobs at least. We're going to have over 3,000 new jobs just in phase one. We're going to have 35, they believe, 35 different suppliers that are going to move to Ohio, different parts of Ohio, and create more and more jobs, and on and on. And that's just phase one. We think that they'll be in 2 and 3 and 4. But the other thing that is really important is that if we are able to get intel, it will send a signal across this country, something's going on in Ohio. We don't have much history of making chips. We make potato chips, but we don't, we don't make chips in Ohio. But we're a manufacturing state, and we've got an abundance of water, and we've got the electricity, and we've kept taxes down, and we're rational on regulations, and I could go on and on. And what has happened is that's exactly what's happened. That sent a signal to people who might not have considered Ohio, and they're now looking at Ohio. And my attitude is I'm confident enough in the product that we have to sell, and that's Ohio, the people of Ohio, the workers of Ohio. I'm confident enough in that if we get them in the door, we're going to make our fair share of sales. And so Jobs Ohio is moving, and I'm proud of what they've done, and we've just begun. So,
thank you very much, Governor. We have reached our destination, and we. And as we close this conversation, I do want to say, and I'm going to put my hat on as the immediate past chair of the Ohio Association of Regional Councils, that we focus on transportation, on economic development, water quality, housing, senior services, and more. We appreciate the state's partnership, and as new things are coming up, such as broadband and other aspects of very important work that the state is doing, we stand by to assist the state in moving its agenda forward.
look forward to working with you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.